The gods and adults are unattainable. The system swore confidently. Can you take me home? The cold master tilted his head, lowered his long eyelashes, and had beautiful eyebrows and eyes, pleading with her with a milky expression. The deity will darken, and redeeming him is a daunting task, the system said. So the firefighter walked up from the flames, holding the little cartoonist and smiling softly, "Do you want to paint me for a lifetime?" The sports student pinched the can with one hand and lazily stared at the slender dancer like a white swan, his voice hoarse. "I want you to dance for me to see." The cold and fierce commander in the interrogation room took off his black leather gloves, his badge was sharp in color, and his thin lips lightly parted, saying, "Please comfort me." System. You turn a blind eye to my performance. #A twisted melon is not sweet. #always overturning. There is a deity above the 9 heavens, dressed in white like snow and unattainable. Later on, the gods had delusions in their hearts, and from then on, they fell, blessing only one person. 1v1 double clean sweet pet, male and female lead slice into slices without memory, sick and delicate ladies have all kinds of steamed buns, keywords of the novel. Quickly wearing. The icy god always acts coquettishly towards me without any pop-ups. Quickly wearing. The icy god always acts coquettishly towards me. Download the complete text. Quickly wearing. The icy god always acts coquettishly towards me. Read the latest chapter. Chapter 1. Melancholy Unmarried Husband vs. 3 Good Citizens in Legal Education 1, for collection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Melancholy Unmarried Husband vs. 3 Good Citizens in Legal Education 1, for collection. The weather in Jiangqing in July is stuffy and hot, with cicadas chirping loudly, making it a sunny day. Jiangqing First Central Hospital. Wang Yuan woke up and found that she had lost her memory. A person who claimed to be her mother came to the ward and chattered incessantly about the issue of engagement, although Wang Yuan did not know what engagement she had, and the woman did not have any intention of explaining it. Perhaps the cicadas chirping is too noisy, even the air is a bit stuffy. Anen. Zhou Xiangshan called her gently, looking a bit tired. You see, this is okay. Didn't you always dislike Mr. Mu? Then you can find a way to meet him with your sister. Your sister is better than you, so naturally she can win Mr. Mu's favor. That's it. The girl on the hospital bed is not very old, very beautiful, even to the point of being aggressive and charming. However, she has a pair of almond eyes, with round and transparent pupils, and a clear and clean distinction. She neutralizes 3 parts of the bright color, and her expression unexpectedly shows pure kindness. She didn't know if she had heard it or not, staring blankly at a teapot flying in the air, and Wang Yuan confirmed that no one else could see it except for her. Why is losing memory beyond scientific concepts? After hearing the sound, Wang Yuan paused slowly for a moment, feeling little about the unfamiliar engagement they were talking about. Whatever. Zhou Xiangshan breathed a sigh of relief and smiled a little more. Then you should rest well and tell your mother if you have anything to do, she said. Madame Zhou, Anan just woke up and needs to rest. The door to the hospital room was suddenly pushed open, and a man in his 30s walked in with messy hair, dark eyes, and an unattractive complexion, as if he had not rested well. Zhou Xiangshan saw him with a pale face and a pretentious expression. Could you please take care of my daughter? After finishing speaking, he walked out of the hospital room, not looking at the man in his eyes, with an uncontrollable smile on his face, as if he could already imagine his daughter marrying into the Mu family with a bright future. The man's face was slightly mocked, but he didn't say anything. After Zhou Xiangshan left, he glared at Wang Yuan with big eyes. Who are you again? Wang Yuan propped her chin, yawned, and forcefully gathered her spirits to guess boldly, was her ex-husband. Wu Nai's face trembled twice and he said, Your ex-husband, I am your agent. Ah. The weather in July in Jiangcheng was like a barbecue stove, but Wu Nai's heart was cold. Looking at Wang Yuan's dull expression, it became even colder. He didn't give up and asked, "You really don't remember anything?" As you can see, Wang Yuan sighed with a melancholic expression. Wu Nai thought to himself, "It's me who should sigh." He pulled out his chair and sat down, coming straight to the point. "Your name is Wang Yuan. He is a very popular star." It sounds really impressive, and Wang Yuan felt a little relieved. She thought she shouldn't have done too poorly before and could become a salted fish in the future. "Then I have a lot of fans, right?" "Yes," Wu Nai smiled kindly. "It's all black powder." After Wu Nai's warm popularization, Wang Yuan understood that she was a pitiful little girl who had attracted countless fans and black fans everywhere. She entered the entertainment industry with her sister, but her sister became the queen actress and she became the queen actress. Sister is gentle and generous. She is vicious and kills, and the whole internet is cursing Wang Yuan as a parasite, sucking on Wang Xian's blood and climbing up. Not long ago, she participated in the same variety show with her sister. During this time, she was lazy and worthless under the backdrop of Wang Xinning, and then she was hit by an extremist fan driving. "I think it's necessary for me to step back from the circle," Wang Yuan said solemnly with a painful expression. "I'm so young, I don't want to die." "Sure, a penalty of 5 million yuan for breach of contract." Wu Nai remained expressionless. Wang Yuan froze for a second, holding her face in both hands and smiling obediently. "I feel that young people should have the courage to fight and the spirit of sacrifice." Wu Nai thinks that Wang Yuan has a bit of a brain problem, but how could that face be beaten? The entire entertainment industry cannot find a second one. How could the black powder bump into me? Wang Yuan touched the gauze wrapped around her head. "Am I so hateful? I also want to ask you. Who knows why you came out from the variety show recording scene in the evening? There are black powder squatting you nearby, or Wang Xinning's illegitimate meal. It's really his mother clever." Wu Nai didn't understand either. Wang Yuan still had amnesia, so this matter is outrageous. "By the way, what did the person who just arrived tell you earlier?" "Make me a matchmaker, I'm engaged." Why do I suddenly feel a little green? She just wants her own daughter to marry into a wealthy family, but it's also considered a matter of personal matters. Wu Nai rolled his eyes and let out a sigh of annoyance. "It's better if your engagement is terminated, so it won't make you and your fiancé hate each other." Wang Yuan seemed to understand. "I really dislike him." Wu Nai's eyelids twitched and he said, "It's not just annoying. You almost gave him a green hat." Speaking of this, Wu Nai remembered something and pulled out a photo from his phone. "Do you know him?" The photo shows a young and handsome male celebrity. Wang Yuan was stunned for 2 seconds and shook his head. "You have been a fan of him for 6 years, just because he entered the entertainment industry. We recorded a variety show together, and it can be considered a template for following celebrities." "Who knew the variety show wasn't finished yet? My goodness, you lost your memory." Outside the ward, the bodyguard pushed a wheelchair and hesitated to stop, whispering, "Sir, you still came in." With a loud bang. The blue sky star was mercilessly thrown into the trash can, appearing somewhat pitiful at first glance. The fingers holding onto the wheelchair armrest were slender, with clear blood vessels and veins, and a faint force was exerted. "What am I going to trouble her for? Don't see me in another car accident." His voice was low and slightly hoarse, with a sarcastic tone. The man sitting in the wheelchair was wearing a black shirt, buttoned to the top, with a sickly pale skin and cold bones. His eyebrows and eyes looked as if they were drawn with a knife edge, and the corners of his eyes and eyebrows showed a hint of the ferocity of the penis. His eyes were lacquered, and his thin lips were bright and beautiful. However, at first glance, I noticed that he often didn't have that face, but rather a sense of luxury and oppression, like the moon in late autumn. Beauty is beautiful, yet it is both gloomy and cold, which is intimidating. The bodyguard glanced at the direction of the trash can and frowned slightly, at least this flower. Mu Junshin interrupted his words with indifference, saying, the flowers have caused Ms. Zhua a lot of trouble. Let her come and see them in person another day. The bodyguard thought to herself, isn't Ms. Zhua all for your engagement? He understood the situation and didn't speak anymore. He had a lot of dissatisfaction with Wang Yuan in his heart, so he pushed his wheelchair back and forth and left. Wu Nai heard a sound outside and was stressed by the ubiquitous paparazzi these days. He sneaked out to take a look and turned around. Ah! Wang Yuan stood in front of him, rubbing her ears and saying, don't shout, it will disturb the people. The hallway on the 4th floor of the hospital was empty and deserted, with a trash can next to it. A prominent bouquet of stars was thrown on top of it, and it was mercilessly abandoned. It's so beautiful. Wang Yuan couldn't move her eyes and stared straight at the flower, a little liking but a little puzzled. Why throw it away? As Wu Nai turned around, she thought she had encountered a ghost and her heart was about to jump out of her throat. They don't like it. Can you be honest, little ancestor? You just finished your surgery. Go back. I'm fine. Wang Yuan jumped in place twice to prove it to him, but then suddenly paused 2 seconds later. What's wrong? Wu Nai looked at her expression and trembled as she asked. Our female protagonist was born and raised, and her memory will be restored later on. She is the same person, and there is no mention of the original protagonist. The female protagonist is not weak in outsiders, please rest assured. I love the female protagonist very much, and each side has a different personality, so I'm still afraid that I can't find the female protagonist's personality that I like. Pen refills, Babies Gao Tian Shuangjie 1v1. The male and female protagonists have no memory, each world is different, and there will be awakening. Various daughters are welcome to unlock. Human Rose vs. Alter Ice and Snow. The new book's softness needs to be nurtured by all the cute little ones, please be so kind to me. Old book. Quickly pierce my demon host Fatty with slaughter seeking favor, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 2. She had a strange posture and struggled to utter a word. Waste. Wang Yuan, who was physically disabled and determined, still thought about the flowers in the trash can. It wasn't until she was content to hold them in her arms that she became happy. Her eyes curved and she couldn't put them down, even forgetting her back pain. The blue bouquet of flowers complemented her beautiful eyebrows and eyes, and her skin was as white as a layer of cold glaze. Her eyes were clean and childish. Although he has a proud face, his temperament is like a milk cat, and the contrast is even more striking. No wonder Wang Yuan's fans have persisted until now, saying, "You can black as you please, as long as you don't delay me from licking my face." Wu Nai looked even more melancholic at her easily satisfied expression. Xiaozhua Jing is so destitute that she even feels satisfied picking up junk. Guilt. But why do you still look so good after losing memory? Speaking of the stubborn personality that even 9 cows couldn't bring back before, Wu Nai picked at the glass shards to find some comfort and patted her shoulder, saying, "Listen to me in the future, you know." Wang Yuan nodded somewhat bewildered. Wu Nai was even more pleased. Later, Wu Nai wanted to come back and slap himself twice, making him confused about people, and was once again deceived by Wang Yuan. Wang Yuan looked at the small thing still floating in the air and asked, "Can you see a teapot?" "What?" "Blue, very beautiful, can fly, right on your head." Silence lasted for a full 3 seconds. Wu Nai crawled to find the doctor, crying with a runny nose and tears, and wailing and howling, "Doctor! She's stupid. Not only is she stupid, but she's also crazy. Please save her, she still wants to be a celebrity." The health pot fell on Wan Yuan's hand, with ancient and intricate patterns that looked old. Gao Ling said, "A useless woman, only you can see me. Oh. I am an ancient teapot that has tasted countless good teas in the world and lived for thousands of years. I have already taken a liking to you, and from now on, you must be a healthy salted fish and live 100 years." Wan Yuan remained indifferent and said, "Oh. Of course, the more important thing is that happiness needs to be shared by two people. As a good person, you need to redeem your strategic goals, gain their recognition, and drive the strategic goals of health preservation." Wan Yuan wanted to sleep and said, "Oh." The health pot was unhappy and said, "Why haven't you reacted at all? Wow. Wan Yuan super cheered, "You're amazing." The health pot felt that Wan Yu was safe in yin and yang, and became angry. "I told you to live well, but you don't know what to do. You're saying things like I'm going to die very miserably," Wan Yuan said lazily. The health pot is silent. On that day, an unwelcome guest arrived in the ward, coughing and panting in one step, delicate and weak, with a gentle and beautiful face that was very charming. "Anan, are you still blaming me?" "Me?" she asked as soon as she came in, holding Wan Yuan's hand. "Wait a moment," Wan Yuan interrupted in time, pulled out his hand, looked at her, and asked seriously, "Who are you?" Wan Xining's speech froze for a moment as she carefully scrutinized the person in front of her. Perhaps because she had narrowly escaped death, the girl's domineering and seductive expression between her eyebrows and eyes disappeared, appearing harmless but still repulsive. "Don't you remember me? Isn't it really foolish? Your words are so interesting. If I remember you, I wouldn't ask." Wan Xining affectionately rubbed the girl's head and said, "I'm your sister. Why did you forget your sister?" Wan Yuan remained silent for 2 seconds. After a brainstorming session, she curiously asked, "Is it the sister who made me lead the red line and said online that she would beat me up 9 streets?" This statement was a bit honest, to the point where Wan Xining didn't even know how to answer the conversation. She twisted and twisted her stomach and was forcefully knocked out. She let out a dry laugh. "What are you saying, Anan? Are you still angry with your sister?" "I can't control what was said online, which has made Anan feel wronged. But rest assured, when the next episode of Beautiful Moments starts recording, I will definitely help you clarify." Beautiful Moments is a variety show that records rural life. It adopts a full network live broadcast and post-production editing method, and has reached the peak of variety show ratings since its launch. In the latest live broadcast not long ago, Wan Yuan pushed Wan Xining down the river, causing a wave of online abuse. Although this was a misunderstanding, Wan Xining did not explain it in a timely manner, and her attitude was ambiguous, which further angered fans, shouting for Wan Yuan to jump into the river and apologize. "Can you sign my name?" Wan Yuan's eyes lit up, and Wan Xining's gaze seemed to be on sparkling gold. Wan Xining looked at Wan Yuan in shock. Wan Yuan felt embarrassed and eagerly handed out the paper and pen, saying, "Is that okay? Wan Xining is so valuable online, her signature must also be very valuable. Wan Yuan seems to have found the password for becoming rich, she wants to switch to selling signatures." Wan Xining felt that Wan Yuan was really foolish after losing her memory. She actually asked for her signature. As a good sister, she bravely signed it. Is Wan Yuan thinking in her heart about how to harm her? "Thank you, sister. You even write so beautifully, you are truly a movie queen." Wan Yuan seemed to see the red ticket crash and smiled, like a mischievous kitten with a sweet mouth and a good way to coax people. For a moment, Wan Xining became even more suspicious and restless, feeling that Wan Yuan was hiding a knife in her smile, with a sweet tongue and a sharp sword in her belly. "Anan," she hesitated and asked, "didn't the doctor say anything about your health after the car accident?" Wan Yuan was puzzled and said, "No, I'm so smart." Wan Xining smiled in her heart, adding a hint of contempt. But are we sisters? Won Yuan stared at Won Xinming's face and couldn't help asking. Why not at all? Won Xinming paused for a moment and smiled faintly. We are remarried and reorganized into a family. After Anan's mother died, my father married my mother. That's a bit interesting. Won Yuan hadn't spoken yet when suddenly a voice sounded outside. Xinming. Why are you here? The door in the ward was pushed open, and a middle-aged couple entered. When they saw Won Yuan, their expressions slightly changed. Let me take a look at my younger sister, Won Xinming coughed. Won Yuan and Won Xinming have never had a good relationship. Won Xinming has a soft temper and is always bullied. Zhou Xiangshan worried and grabbed Won Xinming, whispering as if Won Yuan had done something to her. Won Tang stood beside her and impatiently said to Won Yuan, as long as you're okay, when you're discharged, you can come with us to the Mu family and discuss marriage. After speaking, Won Tang's phone rang, and for an instant, a smile appeared on his face. He didn't know what the other person had said, but his expression suddenly changed. Yes, the engagement matter still needs to be considered in the long run, and we can't play around. An's health is much better, it's not a big deal. Alright, Xiang Shan and I will go over soon. Is it the Mu family? Won Xian's gaze flickered slightly, and she asked softly. It's Mrs. Mu who wants to talk to us about engagement. Won Tang thought to himself about how to climb the mountain of the Mu family. Mom and Dad, can I go with you? Won Xinming suddenly spoke out. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 3. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 3, Won Tang readily agreed. After they left, Won Xinming stayed alone to talk to the girl and affectionately arranged her sleeves, saying, Does Anan know she has a fiancé? Won Yuan has an impression. Wunai told her that she hates that person very much. I heard he had a car accident before and couldn't walk anymore. He's disabled, Won Xinming said regretfully. It's really unfair to ask Anan to marry such an old man. Is that right? Won Yuan's sleepy tears were about to come out, and she really just wanted to sleep. Won Xinming didn't say anything more and left with unclear meaning. Marriage never ends. The cold voice suddenly fell, even the ending sound was like a thin blade. Let's get married then. When the little girl from the Won family is discharged from the hospital, the wedding will be held. Ms. Shua, dressed in a qipao, looked seriously at the person in front of her, dignified and elegant. Mu Junchen buckled one hand on the wheelchair with blue veins protruding and looked out of the landing window. A round of high sun was reflected in his sharp eyes, which blurred the look in his eyes. After a while, he said. Don't worry. Junchen, it's been too long. Even if you're not getting married, you should consider living together for a trial marriage. The meaning of the Won family is that Anan is not suitable, thinking about Won Xinming. Not everyone can enter the Mu family, Mu Junchen interrupted her. Yeah, not everyone can enter, but there are people who don't want to, Ms. Shua said meaningfully. Take me to the hospital again to see Anan. I heard she has amnesia, and I think she should also be aware of the engagement. The man remained silent, his profile deep and cold white, with superior and sharp lines, like a work of art. The bodyguard just pushed Mu Junchen downstairs and happened to bump into the three members of the Won family who were coming towards him. When Won Tang saw Mu Junchen, he was both afraid and wanted to please Chen Xiao. This marriage is held by the Nguyen family, who started in real estate and are considered nouveau riche in the upper class. Unlike the Mu family, they are truly prestigious families. The Mu family has only one son, Mu Junchen. He is a young and skilled businessman who operates in a low-key manner but manages to strategize behind the scenes. At a young age, he was supposed to be full of energy and became disabled due to a car accident a year ago. From then on, his personality has become even more unpredictable and indifferent. This cannot stop him from having power and influence. There's a lot of money. Now that the Ruan family company is in trouble, sealed and bankrupt, the only one who can save the Ruan family is Mu Junchen. Ruan Tang wished he could immediately put his daughter on wings and marry her over. Mu Junchen didn't even glance at them and raised his hand to let Lu Jiu go. Ruan Tang casually touched his nose. Ruan Xian tightly pursed her lips, realizing that with so many living people, Mu Junchen seemed to have missed them. Looking at the back of Lu Juchui as Mu Junchen left, I remembered the first time she saw Mu Junchen was 3 years ago. With just a glance, I couldn't forget it. How could Ruan Yuan, that useless person, climb up to the Mu family? Even if Mu Junchen is disabled, his face and status still make people crazy. Jiangqing First Central Hospital. The branches and leaves of wudong trees are flourishing, and the sun shines through the cracks of wudong trees, scattering in patches, outlining the beautiful outline of men, but the temperament is as indifferent as ice, which is not half warm. Lu Jiu didn't quite understand that Mu Junchen had come to the hospital several times, and each time he could stay for a few hours without going to the ward to see people. Why bother? Unable to help but whisper, Miss Ruan also wants to see you. Even Lu Jiu himself didn't believe what he said. Miss Ruan and Mr. Mu probably owed something in their previous lives, and when they met, it was like meeting an enemy. With a sneer, Mu Junchen sat in a wheelchair, wearing a black shirt and pale skin. Several children around him dared not step forward. He was actually very good looking, but with a hint of resentment mixed in his bones. The scenery of this hospital is more pleasing to the eye than hers. Suddenly, a kite fell from the sky, passed through the wudong tree without warning, and hit Mu Junchen's leg. It should have broken the line, and fell with several fallen leaves. Lu Jiu. Poop. Which child is this from? Mu Junchen frowned and rudely picked up the kite. It was a rabbit pattern, snow-white and soft, which was out of place with him. Just as he was about to throw it, his fingertips snapped. The girl rushed out from behind the tree and ran over in the summer sunshine. She tied a very high ponytail, and with each step, her hair was a bit frizzy. She was wearing a thin white hoodie, which was refreshing and looked like a running rabbit. Mu Junchen was still holding a corner of the kite in his hand, his movements froze inch by inch, and he remained motionless as he gazed at the figure that had entered his sight, his eyes dark and obscure. The girl suddenly brake and stopped in front of him, and Mu Junchen almost suspected that she would collide directly. Ruan Yuan's fingers were still holding the broken string of the kite, wrapping it around her fingertips bit by bit. Her blood vessels were exposed in the sunlight, and she could even glimpse the remaining pinholes and bruises, revealing a small section of her wrist that was thin and white. "I'm sorry, this is mine." She looked at the man in front of her and didn't expect the quality of the kite to be so poor that it could break the string. She thought to herself, isn't Wunai cheating on her? The man's side face is sharp and angular, looking a bit thin, and his body is filled with sunshine that cannot warm his depression. Ruan Yuan didn't know how to describe it, her aura was terrifying. At this moment, holding a rabbit kite in her hand seemed inexplicably funny, she said politely. "Sorry, can you return it to me?" Mu Junchen didn't react, just stared at her. His eyes under his long eyelashes were consistently deep, with ink flowing. Beautiful was beautiful, which made people feel intimidated when they looked at her. The health pot suddenly became excited and said, "It's him, it's him. Redeem him. Hurry up. Let him live." Ruan Yuan glanced at the kite and was not quite convinced. She felt that she was the one who should be redeemed. Seeing that Mu Junchen had not responded, she could only reach out and pinch the kite, pulling it out. Without pulling, she exerted her strength again. Before she could pull, she looked dryly at Mu Junchen and politely said, "Can you let go of your hand?" When Lu Jiu saw the visitor, his scalp tingled. He knew he was not suitable to stay any longer and silently left. What are these things? The sky is cloudless, wudong trees grow luxuriantly, Mu Junchen's surly eyebrows and eyes are nowhere to hide in the sun, exposed straight, stared at her for a long time, the throat rolled up and down, the throat knot was sexy, the voice was hoarse and dark, like a thin blade, cool, unable to identify the emotions, every word. Ruan Yuan. Ruan Yuan was startled when she heard her name. Her heart first cooled down, and then she touched her face, realizing that she had forgotten to wear a mask, which had cooled down again. Then she thought of the bloody scene she had been scolded online, and the black fans were unstoppable. In front of her was a complete darkness. Suddenly, my whole heart felt a chill, my head shook like a tambourine, and my ponytail swayed back and forth, denying, "It's not me. I'm not Ruan Yuan. You mistook me for the wrong person. She doesn't want to die. She doesn't want to be hit by a car again. She just wants to fly a kite." End of this chapter. Chapter 4. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 4, like a rabbit with its fur blown up. Mu Junchen had such an untimely thought in his heart, only feeling that the ponytail was shaking and causing him a headache. As he watched the girl want to run, his fingers unconsciously clenched on the kite, and his knuckles turned white. He said coldly, "Stop." Ruan Yuan did want to skate, but she couldn't bear to part with the kite. Coupled with this person threatening her, she stood in a dilemma for a moment, her gaze fixed on the kite, hesitated for a moment, and cautiously probed, "Are you my black fan?" Black fans. Mu Junchen's side face melted into the light and shadow, and half fell into the shadow under the wudong tree. The lines were sharp and clear, the skin was extremely white, and the lip color was extremely bright, so that a strange sense of fascination was formed. He opened his mouth in a solemn tone and chewed the two words. "Aren't you?" Seeing that Mu Junchen didn't answer for a moment, Ruan Yuan let out a small sigh of relief, her eyebrows slightly happy. She said, "What kind of black powder is there to this face? Just go ahead and become an idol." Mu Junchen's cold fingertips slowly caressed the edges of the kite, feeling that the words, black and pink, were somewhat ridiculous. His gaze remained fixed on Ruan Yuan, not moving a bit away, exuding a sharp aggressiveness. That kind of gaze was too dark, as if it could easily cut through flesh and bone. Ruan Yuan always felt that this person's gaze at her was strange and indescribable. But she didn't do anything. She just dropped a kite and didn't intentionally hit the man. Ruan Yuan felt that she was really wronged, as if no one knew how to mark people, so Ruan Yuan also stared at him. For a moment, his eyes met each other, and the atmosphere was subtle. Mu Junchen suddenly smiled, and even his smile looked as if he was angry, which was puzzling. Ruan Yuan has lost her memory. She forgot about him. Mu Junchen was acutely aware of this and gazed at the girl's clear and transparent apricot eyes, so clean that they could be seen through at a glance, completely different from him. His fingertips on the wheelchair tightened for a moment. "Yeah," he said with a light and slow bite, his voice low and deep, unable to say whether it was cold or sarcastic. "I'm your black fan." At that moment, Ruan Yuan didn't know if her mind was twitching or something. She stared straight at the person in front of her and asked seriously, "Can I ask you a question?" Mu Junchen squinted his eyes and remained silent. "Are you black fans committing the crime in a gang or acting alone?" Ruan Yuan looked around and leaned closer to the man, nervously bowing down and deliberately lowering her voice, adding a hint of solemn suspicion to the atmosphere. "Is there a plan for the next time to target me? What is she being a black fan?" She leaned closer, and Mu Junchen could even see her eyelashes clearly. Her skin was porcelain white and delicate. The next second, Mu Junchen mercilessly pushed her away, his voice thin and cool. "Sorry, we black fans usually don't sell information." As Ruan Yuan approached, she smelled a pleasant faint fragrance on the man's body, refreshing and slightly cold, like a handful of first snow. Before she could even study what the smell was, she was pushed away and could only give up for now. After careful consideration, he proposed a compromise solution and sincerely said, "I can spend money to buy it. Do you think it's okay?" Mu Junshin's face remained expressionless. "Aren't you just hitting porcelain?" Ruan Yuan looked at him suspiciously, and a guess slowly formed in her heart. The more she thought about it, the more likely it was. She frowned and accused him, "You're not a professional fan at all." Mu Junshin nodded slowly and said in an inexplicable tone, "Do I touch porcelain? I don't have money even if you touch porcelain, I'm really poor." The tone sounded a little proud. Mu Junshin let out a sigh, his face expressionless. "I'll just touch porcelain." Ruan Yuan stared at him, a bit convinced that this person was really a fan, feeling that these words were mocking her, so she also mocked her back. "Are you the little princess?" The man sat in a wheelchair, with a cold and delicate appearance and a thin figure. Wearing that shirt always made people feel thin, like the moon in the night sky. If it weren't for those legs, he would have had an outstanding demeanor. He didn't react at all when he heard that sentence. His long eyelashes cast a shadow, his eyes were pitch black, and his sharpness was like cutting gold and jade, looking at her. Ruan Yuan stands much taller than Mu Junshin, her gaze not too comfortable sweeping over the man's legs. "She didn't say anything outrageous, did she?" After hesitating for a few seconds, the girl decided to squat down, lean against the tree, hold her face in both hands, and look at Mu Junshin. She felt it necessary to change the topic. Thinking of the smell she had just smelled on him, she couldn't help but ask, "What kind of fragrance is on you?" "It smells pretty good." As soon as the words fell, the face of the person who had not responded suddenly darkened for some reason. The fierce aura around the corners of his eyes and eyebrows was somewhat frightening. His long finger was clasped on the wheelchair, and his color was pale. He called out in a low voice, "Lu Jiu." Lu Jiu stood not far away watching a play and quickly packed up his melon seeds when he heard his employer's voice. "Let's go." Mu Junshin uttered a word without giving Ruan Yuan a single glance from beginning to end. Well, with this expression on their face, it's clear that the two of them haven't reached an agreement yet. Lu Jiu was used to it, smiled and nodded at Ruan Yuan, then numbly pushed the wheelchair out. Ruan Yuan. Heaven and earth have a conscience, she just wants to know what brand it is. She didn't say anything bad. Why are you like this? Ruan Yuan couldn't believe it. Can you make some sense? Mu Junshin sarcastically spoke in a low voice, what are you reasoning with the black fans? Has some sense. It wasn't until Lu Jiu pushed the man away that Ruan Yuan remembered something. She lowered her head and looked at the remaining lines in her hand. Where was her kite? The health pot was almost infuriated, and a deep resentment blew in her ear. Stop kiting. We finally met, but we didn't even get our contact information. What should we do in the future? You asked me to redeem black fans, why don't you let me save the world? Ruan Yuan frowned and felt depressed. The health pot cheered her on and said, making a pot also requires self-awareness. Don't be afraid, boldly charge forward and break into the enemy's internal forces to disintegrate the black powder forces. When I woke up, I not only lost my memory but also carried black powder debt. Little pitiful fate is so bitter. At 9 o'clock at night, Ruan Yuan wrote a diary. She pondered for several seconds and wrote in her notebook, stroke by stroke, today I met a thief who stole my kite. He is my black fan. I think he wants to take this opportunity to retaliate against me. Ruan Yuan snorted and thought for a moment. His cold and stern face flickered before him, hesitating for a while before finally adding another sentence. The thief is a bit good looking. Ruan Yuan, are you childish? You also write this kind of diary for primary school students. Wunai just came back from buying wonton, and saw the girl biting her pen cap and concentrating on writing something. He glanced at the top line. July 12, Monday, Qing. This format is really quite orthodox. Wunai couldn't help but speak. Wang Yuan was scared out of her wits. Subconsciously, she closed her notebook and slapped it on Wunai, feeling very angry. What's wrong with immaturity? How could you sneak a peek at someone else's diary? Unfortunately, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. She goes to move bricks without doing business. 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. She goes to move bricks without doing business. 5. The diary was hit on Wunai's packed wonton, and the bag quickly broke open with the momentum of destruction. In a flash, the soup overflowed and splashed both of them. After a brief silence, Wunai's face changed completely, and he gritted his teeth and said, Wan. You. N. Wang Yuan felt a deep pain in her heart, and her trembling hand said, My diary. After the late-night snack incident, the black and red celebrities and their agents quickly broke up, and their relationship crumbled and was on the verge of collapse. Until discharge. Wang Yuan was carrying a goose-yellow backpack, with a fluffy little yellow duck hanging from the strap and a bouquet of stars in her arms, bright and cute. This is all the property she has in hospital. Miss Wan, get in the car. Maybach stopped outside the hospital, and Wang Yuan looked at the license plate number and then at the driver in front of him, feeling dazed. Is my family so wealthy? Wunai poured cold water professionally. Your family is bankrupt, this is the Mu family's car. Didn't your family tell you? The driver smiled at Wang Yuan and said, Our Lady Zhuo wants to see you. Zhuo Wan, the mother of Mu Junqian. Wunai and Wang Yuan have been educated on science. Wang Yu settled down for a moment. You can transfer the hospitalization expenses to me these days, Wunai reminded Wang Yuan. Wang Yuan transferred money to him, but received a reminder of insufficient balance. The alarm sounded in his heart, and he silently looked at his phone balance, totaling 39 cents. After a while, he raised a reasonable question. Did I hide any gold card? Even if my family goes bankrupt, at least I am still a celebrity. Yeah. Wunai spoke lightly, You've completely defeated me. You don't have the habit of saving money for retirement. Hurry up and repay me the money. Wang Yuan tearfully said, Can you bear it? Very patient, dear. Wang Yuan became angry and became a dolphin. What's the quick way to get money? You go to the construction site to move bricks, it's more expensive to do so, Wunai sneered. Wunai really just casually said it, to the point where he was shocked when he saw it suddenly become the top trending topic on Weibo. Miss Wan. The driver helped her open the car door. Wunai didn't dare to brush the face of the Mu family, coughed heavily several times, and then calmly whispered to Wang Yuan, I can't save you either. Anyway, remember not to offend the Mu family too much. Thinking that Wang Yuan had already thoroughly offended the only son of the Mu family before, he quickly added, You should follow them when speaking. Wang Yuan was completely immersed in the shock of realizing that she was truly poor, so poor that she was only 39 cents and burdened with a huge debt. So he was abducted, and when he saw Zhuo Wan, he was as friendly as seeing his daughter, and then he was taken to the villa of Gong Xin ruating in a daze, until he saw the driver smile and say goodbye to her. Miss Wan, you and your husband will be staying here in the future. If you need anything, please let me know. We have prepared all the daily necessities for you, said the butler kindly. Wang Yuan looked at the butler's kind and warm face before realizing something and slowly asked, Who am I with? Sir, your fiancée A. The girl was wearing a hoodie, with 2 rabbit ears pulled down from her hat and a high ponytail. Her eyes were bewildered and innocent, with a washed innocent feeling. Her facial features were bright and delicate, striking, and the contrast was strong, tender to the point of being a minor. The butler despised this cohabitation behavior for a second. Won Yuan was lost in thought and couldn't figure out how things had turned out like this. The butler's tone was so enthusiastic that Won Yuan felt embarrassed and said, "Miss Ruan, if you have anything you need to pick up from Ruan's house, just let Xiao Zhang drive with you. You can take this place as your home." Won Yuan sorted out the matter like a string of beads, and her expressionless face bulged. Her apricot eyes shone amber in the sunlight, revealing a business-style signature smile. "Where's your husband?" When meeting Ms. Zhua, Won Yuan proposed a reasonable termination of the engagement, but the other party threw the ball directly to her and asked her to discuss with her fiancé. She didn't know what her ghostly fiancé was thinking. Why does this thing still have a strong buy and sell? Zhuo Wan said, if ain't in mind a trial marriage, she can directly obtain a certificate to hold the wedding. I almost scared Won Yuan to death. #early marriage in a young age. #a twisted melon is really not sweet, sir. He has been busy with company matters for the past few days and will definitely come back when he has time, said the butler with a smile on his face. When he comes back, please let me know, uncle. Won Yuan rubbed her head and suppressed her worried thoughts. She hesitated for a moment before sincerely adding, you really don't need to smile like that. I can't bear it. Good. Won Yuan planned to discuss with her fiancé whom she had never met before, and besides, Wu Nai had said that this fiancé particularly disliked her, believing that terminating the engagement was not a big problem. I heard that her fiancé's name is Mu Junchen. She had a car accident before and had a leg disability. For some reason, she inexplicably thought of the black fan she met that day. What a coincidence. She thought to herself. The room has been decorated with care, very girlish, with a fresh and artistic princess style that doesn't match the overall cold, hard, black, white and gray. Won Yuan rolled on the bed and placed the blue sky stars that have accompanied her since hospitalization on the bedside table. The house is really beautiful, but unfortunately she can't stay too long. After Won Yuan entered the house, the butler also touched his head. He had already mustered up 12 points of energy to deal with Miss Ruan, but suddenly realized that Won Yuan seemed to have changed his mind. The butler sent a WeChat message to Lu Jiu. Miss Ruan is very concerned about her husband, and she asked when he will come back. We have achieved great success. Lu Jiu saw WeChat and looked up at the figure in front of the desk. After hesitating for 2 seconds, he stepped forward and said, Sir. Mu Junchen leaned against the back of the chair, always expressionless, with a cold and stiff black tie that contrasted with a golden neckline. His slender fingers turned a pen, and his movements were indifferent and gloomy. Lu Jiu mustered up his courage and said, Miss Ruan has already moved in. Uncle Li said she is very enthusiastic and doesn't resist at all. He also asked when you will be back, sir. She misses you very much. Isn't that why she wants to meet you, sir? Do you think so? Click. The expensive and cold pen suddenly fell onto the table, rolling down a considerable distance. Mu Junchen slowly lifted his gaze, with a sharp edge at the end of his eyes. The pitch-black light in his eyes made it impossible to look directly, and he said, Are you sure? Lu Jiu said seriously, Uncle Li told me that. Sir, you also know that Uncle Li, who is so simple, definitely won't deceive anyone. Sorry, for the sake of your husband's lifelong life, Uncle Li, please sacrifice yourself first. Just her. Mu Junchen's tone swept over his usual sarcasm, and halfway through, he suddenly remembered the person in the hospital looking like a crazy rabbit. He remained silent for a long time and whispered, Let's go. Road 9 brings great joy. In the development zone of Jinji construction site, dust is rising all over the construction site and the sun is shining brightly. Little girl, you can't do this. Moving bricks is a hard work. The worker's temples twitched and he scratched his head, refusing. I can do it. Won Yuan clenched his fist, I have immense strength. Let me try it once. The workers felt that Won Yuan was just playing around, so they couldn't bear it and asked her to give it a try. At this moment, Won Yuan's phone suddenly rang, and news came that it was the stepmother. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 6, Zhou Xiangshan. You have been discharged. Why didn't you tell your family? They said you moved to the Mu family, but Mr. Mu doesn't like you. He will be with your sister sooner or later. Zhou Xiangshan. Tell me the address, Xining will come to see you. You can arrange for them to get married as soon as possible, which will benefit everyone. The Ruan family is not bankrupt now compared to before. Think carefully. Won Yuan squinted her eyes and glanced at her. Although she didn't want to get married, she didn't have any interest in matchmaking with others and typed slowly on the keyboard, unfamiliar. Who is that? Chen Gu saw a girl on the construction site from a distance, and his back made him itch. Wearing a spacious camouflage suit, one can vaguely see the slender waist and slender lines as one moves. Wearing a baseball cap, sunglasses, and mask, the skin is white to a glow in the sunlight. She's a new girl today, probably she doesn't understand anything. If she can't bear it later, she should leave, the supervisor said earnestly. Chen Gu is the project manager of this project, dressed in a suit and resembling a human figure. He straightened his collar and stared at the figure in the distance with interest in his eyes. He didn't expect that a visit to the construction site would still allow him to discover a treasure. This kind of girl who is short of money is the easiest to get caught. Won Yuan is not very good at typing on her phone, just like an old man holding a smartphone, poking and poking with his fingertips one by one, and returning a serious sentence. It's better to rely on oneself than on others to run and rely on trees to fall. Zhou Xiangshan quickly replied, What do you mean? Won Yuan Gue typed the keyboard quickly. Be a mature person, don't rely on others, have aspirations and strive for success. Zhou Xiangshan. Won Yuan, speak up. Won Yuan continued, life needs to be colorful, hold happiness and warmth with your own hands. Zhou Xiangshan's face twisted with anger at Won Yuan's endless words, and she couldn't fit in. Her typing hand trembled as she said, Won Yuan, did you have a car accident and damage your brain? Won Yu calmly replied, No, welcome sister and Mr. Mu to be together at any time. I'm just not interested in wearing a green hat on my own. Zhou Xiangshan probably got angry with Won Yuan and didn't respond for a long time. She wandered back and forth in the living room, angry and complaining to her daughter, this fool doesn't know anything. Do you really think you can tie Mr. Mu up through the engagement? Won Xining remained calm and composed, sitting upright on the sofa drinking tea. Mom, what are you in a hurry about? They're just trying to get married, not getting married. A hint of determination flashed in her eyes, and she smiled as she said, They have been engaged for so many years without any feelings. It's not a secret that Mr. Mu hates Won Yuan, and let Won Yuan be proud for a few days. You're right. Zhou Xiangshan slowly calmed down and sneered, her mother didn't snatch me back then, and this useless daughter couldn't possibly match you. The weather is hot, and even the wind seems to have set fire. The other workers were sweating profusely, while Won Yuan easily pulled the cart and ran. She had a special physique and was naturally possessed of strange powers, so she didn't expect to move bricks at an affordable price. The other workers saw the girl dragging the cart back and forth by herself, only to realize that the clown was herself, so shocked that her chin was about to drop. How could a girl's family have such great strength? #Life is not easy, moving bricks and performing arts. It's impossible for a girl to come to a construction site like this for 100 years, especially if she looks delicate and angry. If it weren't for her ID card, she wouldn't believe she's an adult. At noon, Wan Yuan sat with the workers eating boxed meals without any hesitation and disdain. When she took off her mask, she hesitated for a moment, feeling that she wouldn't encounter the fans and was very hungry. So, regardless of the time, she happily pulled the rice, her cheeks bulging like a little hamster eating, and her eyes narrowed with satisfaction and pleasure. How could you, a girl, come to such a place? How does your family manage it? After finishing these things, let's go back. Did you argue with your parents? The job of moving bricks is not a long-term solution. You are still young, go to school well, and get into a good university. It's better than anyone else. The workers looked at Wan Yuan as if they were looking at their own daughters and advised them one after another. Wan Yuan nodded shyly, tied her ponytail obediently, feeling out of place on the dusty construction site. Her large camouflage outfit complemented her slender figure, and she innocently held a boxed lunch, saying, "I'm just a little short of money." It must be a big deal to force such a fair and delicate girl to come out and move bricks. The workers instantly imagined countless versions of tragic families being deceived, feeling extremely heartbroken. They silently gave Wan Yuan chicken legs and comforted her with various words and expressions. #becoming the darling of the construction team. #carrying bricks is a pity. The workers warmly made Wan Yuan feel a bit overwhelmed, moved to tears, and embarrassed to return the chicken legs. "I have a small appetite." Then they watched helplessly as Wan Yuan, who had a small appetite, cooked 3 boxes of boxed meals. "I have a small appetite and don't eat much, so it's easy for me to support myself." The sky gradually darkened, and when the brick-moving day was over, the supervisor gave Wan Yuan 600 yuan, a full 600 yuan. Wan Yuan was simply overjoyed, happily touching her pocket, and instantly felt like she was a wealthy woman now. She bid farewell to her new friends one by one and then walked home in joy. "This beautiful girl, where are you going? I wonder if I have the honor of seeing you off." A gentle conversation suddenly sounded in her ear. Wan Yuan first cautiously covered her mask and looked at the man in front of her in a gray suit. He looked like he was in his 30s or 40s, with a slightly distorted figure and a smiling expression. The glances were uncomfortable. "I'm afraid not," Wan Yuan politely declined. Chen Gu didn't panic even when he was rejected. He lifted his foot and blocked Wan Yuan's way out, deliberately revealing the gold watch on his wrist, pretending to be polite and saying, "I am the manager of this engineering project. It's not safe for you to go home alone, so let me see you off." A novice girl, as soon as she saw his identity, she immediately rushed forward and won it. "It's not a problem. Chen Gu is very confident. Do you want to soak me?" Wan Yuan exclaimed astonishingly. Chen Gu paused for a moment, not expecting the girl to be so direct. "I'm really interested in you, we can develop slowly." "I'm not interested in you," Wan Yuan advised. "Don't waste your time, the sea of suffering is endless and you'll come back to shore." Chen Gu never expected to be rejected like this. His smile froze as he watched the girl run away. In no time, it disappeared. He reacted and cursed, with a slightly gloomy expression on his face. However, he soon smiled gently, with a greasy smile on his chubby face. He didn't believe it anymore, this girl only came this once. Wan Yuan originally intended to return to Gongxin Ruiding, but when she realized that she had never returned to the Ruan family since her amnesia, she paused and then changed her direction. She always wanted to go back and take a look. Wan Yuan. "I move a lot of bricks, no money, just the tickets in my little cutie's hand crazy seeking feed." JPG. A collection building has been built in the book review area, with a wide space for those who want to see, creating a lively atmosphere together. I don't know what time you guys are reading, so good morning, good afternoon, and good night. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. She goes to move bricks without doing business. 7. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. She goes to move bricks without doing business. 7. I don't know why, but Won Yuan feels very resistant to returning to the Won family. After discussing with her fiancé A to terminate her engagement, she can move bricks and have money, and renting a house is also good. As long as she insists on moving bricks, buying a big and beautiful house is not a dream. Daydreams are simply too beautiful, reality is bleak and miserable. After getting excited, Won Yuan wilted again. The Nguyen family has been on a downward trend in recent years. Recently, the company has encountered problems again, unable to turn over funds and went bankrupt, leaving only such a villa. Fortunately, Nguyen Tang still has a daughter like Nguyen Xining, otherwise there would be no villa left. When the servant saw Won Yuan, she was stunned and said, "Mississippi." Won Yuan nodded and said, "Where is my room?" "On the second floor." The servant heard that Won Yuan had lost her memory and led her upstairs. Won Yuan said thank you and asked the servant to come down first, pushing open the door. The room is warm and beautiful, mainly in light color series, very girlish, with snow-white gauze curtains, pink wallpaper, fabric sofas, and various small yellow duck sticky notes attached. Everything is familiar yet unfamiliar. My daughter needs to be spoiled into a princess. A sentence suddenly came to mind, causing Won Yuan to be stunned and her eyes inexplicably sour. She slowly leaned against the wall, somewhat bewildered, covering her heart, which was very painful. How can we forget? The last memory. The most dazzling thing in the room is not the various princess-style designs, but the magnificent and huge celebrity posters, the perimeter filled with cabinets, and his figure can be seen from various corners and daily necessities. The man on the poster is young and delicate, with a bold smile. It was the person Wu Nai showed her when she woke up from amnesia that day. It is said to be the celebrity she pursues. Su Gaoi. Won Yuan also found many paper notes with folded stars in the drawer. I didn't expect she would still like to discount this. Yuan, you're back. Won Xining pushed open the door, her voice smiling as she scanned the poster in the room with a faint gaze. Won Yuan stayed for a few seconds, adjusted her emotions, and her voice became soft as if she was acting coquettish. Sister, could you sign a few more names for me? Won Xining. What exactly does she want to do? Won Xining felt puzzled in her heart and calmly signed 10 names for her. Sister is really good, Won Yuan said, holding her signature like a kitten. I dare not take it for granted. The recording of Beautiful Moments will start next week. Will Ainen go with me? I can go by myself. Won Xining looked like a good sister and said, you should restrain yourself in the variety show and not cause any more trouble, otherwise I won't be able to stop the show. Won Yuan also knew how badly she had been criticized in variety shows before, and nodded seriously, Sister, you're right. I will make changes. Gongxin Ruiding. The empty living room is cold and luxurious, with expensive and indifferent colors everywhere, and the minimalist design lacks any human touch. Mu Junchen sat in a wheelchair, his slender fingers tapping lightly on the armrest, and his slender figure appeared even colder under the light. His tone was unclear. She's very enthusiastic. Lu Jiu's limbs are stiff. She misses me very much. Cold sweat dripped from Lu Jiu's forehead. She wants to meet me. A calm voice fell, although lazy and emotionless, it looked like the tranquility before the storm. Lu Jiu gritted his head and shouted, Uncle Li told me that, and I don't know. Standing next to him, Uncle Li looked at Lu Jiu in shock. Lu Jiu felt even more guilty in his heart, but it didn't stop him from distancing himself and staring at Uncle Li with a painful gaze. Uncle Li's expression seemed to be saying, how could you, this stinky kid, calculate on me like this? Mu Junchen's temper is definitely not good. He used to be, and since the car accident, he has been even more violent and unpredictable. Just when Li Shu and Lu Jiu thought he was going to lose his temper, they heard him calmly say, forget it, and lightly let it go. Then, Mu Junchen flatly uttered a word. "Let's go." Uncle Lee hesitated and advised, "Sir, you've come back all the time. Let's stay for one night. Miss Ruan may have gone out for something, so she should be back soon." "Who said I was because of her?" Mu Junchen slowly rubbed the cufflinks on his shirt, and for a moment, he pressed his fingertips so hard that they turned white. His pitch-black, narrow eyes glanced at Uncle Lee, reflecting a gorgeous light without any warmth. The desire for survival prompted Uncle Lee to quickly say, "Yes, yes," not because of Miss Ruan. Mu Junchen's face did not ease at all, but rather became even more gloomy, with each word mixed with ice. "Return to the company. If I had known who Wan Yuan was, I would have believed Lu Jiu's words and asked for it myself. What is he expecting?" Mu Junchen pulled his thin lips, with a slight sarcastic curvature, and quickly pressed them down. Lu Jiu had no choice but to push Mu Junchen away and briefly exchanged glances with Uncle Lee for a second, shaking his head helplessly. "What's the point of not being able to return home?" Outside Gongxinrui Courtyard is a spacious and prosperous commercial street, also known as the Night Street, with brilliant lights that never go out all night. Lu Jiuxing was driving when suddenly he heard Mu Junchen say, "Stop and bring cat food." Upon hearing the strings, Lu Jiu knew his elegance and found a place to stop the car. He removed the wheelchair and Mu Junchen propped himself up, sitting on it with his arms straight and jawline sharp. Lu Jiu paused for a moment. Even though this situation had been going on for a year, he sometimes felt uncomfortable looking at it. Mu Junchen was a proud son of heaven and a new business tycoon, so he shouldn't have been. Now, this scene is difficult to even walk independently. There are stray cats near Bihong Commercial Street, which were relatively rare a few years ago, but have become more frequent in recent years. Mu Junchen often goes to feed them, but it is quite incongruous for someone like this cold and gloomy person to feed cats. "Sir, someone has fed it today." Lu Jiu looked at the cat food on the ground in the alley and exclaimed in surprise. "I see it. There is no moon tonight, and the sky is gloomy." Those stray cats, who were originally comfortable lying on the ground, immediately arched their backs when they saw Mu Junchen, their pupils contracted into a line, and they let out a roaring sound, clearly very alert and cautious. A person with a cold and hard temperament cannot please animals, and this statement is not wrong for Mu Junchen. Just like how he has been feeding for so many years, these stray cats still explode when they see Mu Junchen. It's natural to be like this, whether it's cats, dogs or other animals. When paired with Mu Junchen, it's like seeing a natural enemy. Mu Junchen withdrew his gaze, straightened his spine, and didn't care. "Let's go." Unexpectedly, as soon as he left the alley, it started raining halfway through. The rain grew colder and colder, and Mu Junchen's body couldn't bear the cold. Every rainy night, it was even more painful. Lu Jiu quickly pushed him to a nearby shelter to avoid the rain and looked around, saying, "Sir, I'll go and drive the car over." The man sat in a wheelchair, whether frozen or something, with a pale skin in the darkness that looked a bit frightening. However, this did not prevent him from having beautiful eyebrows, delicate and thin, like a colorless painting. This temperament actually added a touch of contradictory charm to him. On the street corner, on rainy nights, under dim yellow streetlights, fragile to the point of shattering a painting with a cinematic texture. Across the street was a bar, and two swaying young men walked out of it. Suddenly, they saw the figure in the wheelchair, with no one around. They didn't want to walk over drunk and said, "Oh, he's a cripple." Next, please enjoy Niu Huluan, a magical hero of beauty and salvation. You vote more, I watch more, everyone is happy. Today is another day of begging for tickets while holding a bowl. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. She goes to move bricks without doing business. 8. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. She goes to move bricks without doing business. 8. The smell of alcohol spread over their faces, and the two of them blocked in front of Mu Junchen. When they saw that face, they were a bit surprised and jokingly said, "Why is it all alone at night? No one wants it. He's disabled, how could anyone want him? Unfortunately, this face. Why don't we spend the night with our brothers?" Roll. Mu Junchen suddenly raised his eyes, and the fleeting car lights flashed through his eyes and quickly sank into the shadows, making it difficult to distinguish. The two young brothers are distinguished and used to bullying. They drank a little too much wine today. They were stunned, and then laughed. How dare they curse people? They are still fierce. Who the hell do you curse for being lame? I don't know who moved their hand first and pushed the wheelchair. Stop it. An hour ago, the Ruan family was a bit far from Gongshinruating. Wang Yuan thought that she only had 690.39 yuan now and owed Wu Nai 1 yuan for hospitalization and taking the bus. I don't know if it's enough to pay off the debt. Thinking about these things made her heart ache. If it weren't for the distance being too far, Wang Yuan would even want to walk back. She touched the freshly baked signature in her pocket and calculated that she could still sell it for a sum of money to repay Wu Nai. Sister is really too kind to her. It's great to have an older sister. Wang Yuan is willing to be the little sisters of harmonious non-plastic with Wan Xinning. She put on a mask and hat and sat on the bus, counting the station names in her heart, and got off at the nearest stop, Bihong Commercial Street. Coincidentally, there was a convenience store across from her. Wang Yuan touched her stomach and hesitated for 2 seconds before running slowly home to buy a glass of milk. On the way, she met several stray cats and kept barking around her. She didn't expect so many cats on this street. Without much hesitation, she ran back to the convenience store to buy cat food and crouched in the alley to feed them. The lights outside the alley slanted down, casting a hazy shadow over the girl's figure. The drooping eyelashes are long and curly, and my chin is pressed on my knee as I watch them eat. My rosy lips are biting into a bag of walnut milk, and my fingers are slender. I rub the cat's head and mutter softly, "What you eat is more expensive than me." Meow. She looked at the cats that were eating delicious cat food, and finally looked around to make sure there was no one around. She held her face tightly, as if she was doing something big in life, and launched an attack on the cat food with great enthusiasm. She just took a sip. She won't compete with the cat. She tried them for poison. Wang Yuan thought this way, feeling that he was really too great. He stole a cat food with lightning speed, and the orange cat licked its fur, slowly lifting its head and staring at Wang Yuan for 1 or 2 seconds. Wang Yuan remained calm and took a bite of cat food in front of the orange cat. What are you looking at? Have you not seen it? 1 second, 2 seconds, poo, poo, poo. The girl's small face wrinkled into a bun, wearing a painful mask, so unpleasant. Wang Yuan looked tearfully at the remaining half of the cat food in her hand, then at the chubby orange cat still staring at her, and made a decision. She reached out her sinful hand and stuffed the bitten half back into the cat food on the ground. She quickly stirred and mixed it together, confirming that the orange cat would no longer recognize it. She nodded in satisfaction and gently rubbed the cat's head, saying, "Eat it." Perhaps in just a few seconds, the orange cat needs a lifetime to heal. Indeed, cats and dogs are incompatible. Wang Yuan still focused on sucking his walnut milk, squatting on the ground looking like a little one. These stray cats don't look thin, they should be frequently fed, meowing, and showing extraordinary affection towards her. They proactively expose their belly, tilt their heads, and look at Wang Yuan, as if saying, "Mash me." Wang Yuan's young girl's heart was about to explode. When she left, she deliberately remembered this street and waited for her next visit. She swore to God that she would never steal cat food again, it's really a sin. Just as she walked out of the alley, it seemed like she had stepped on something soft. Wang Yuan lowered her head and found a person lying by the wall. To be precise, it is difficult to call him a person. He is wearing a wrinkled shirt with no visible color, and a pair of worn-out pants with exposed threads. He is wearing a large straw hat, with skin that has been exposed to the wind and sun, and is very rough. A face covered in stubble is exposed from under the straw hat, and his eyes are as black as an eagle, not like the eyes of a homeless man. At this moment, I stared at her with big eyes and said gently, "Girl, you stepped on my hand." "I'm really sorry," Won Yuan apologetically lifted her foot. "It's okay." He was kind and generous, like a good elder. "If you're really sorry, you can give me something to eat." "It makes sense." Won Yuan nodded in agreement and carefully explored her pocket before realizing that she didn't have much to eat on her body. She also drank half of the walnut milk, and then she felt a hard little thing in her pocket. I was pleasantly surprised and took it out. When I looked down, I realized it was cat food that had fallen into my pocket at an unknown time. It can be called cat food that leaks the net. Oh no, she really doesn't have any intention of hiding it. Won Yuan was a bit embarrassed. He looked at the cat food in his hand for a while, then at the homeless man. After a brief exchange of glances, Song Jin seemed to understand something from the girl's eyes. Just as he was about to say that it was okay if there was no food, he saw her gently extend her hand and speak to him with a slightly hesitant, soft voice. "Why don't you take a bite?" "I only have this one cat food, and I have eaten it before. It's not poisonous." Her expression was so kind, her tone was so sincere, and at that moment, she seemed to be surrounded by the light of Buddha, saving all beings. Song Jin felt that the girl was so sincere in inviting him to eat cat food, and he felt a bit ungrateful when he refused again. He hesitated for a moment and said, "Let me taste it." Won Yuan carefully handed the last cat food to Song Jin's hand, letting out a sigh of relief. Song Jin felt that there might be something wrong with his mind and stared at the cat food in his hand, struggling to get off for a moment. He has never been so sad after writing so many scripts. In the end, in the bright and expectant eyes of the girl, she still felt that it didn't matter to taste a bite, after all, cats eat so delicious and not bad. So he swallowed the whole one directly. In the unnoticed corner, a white light flickered. "How about it? Is it delicious?" Won Yu smiled with an eyebrow. Song Jin's expression stiffened for a whole 2 seconds, then he smiled and swallowed. "It's delicious." Indeed, people have different tastes. Won Yuan murmured to herself, feeling a bit embarrassed as she finished. "I'll go buy 2 loaves of bread, you wait here." Song Jingang wanted to say no more, so the girl ran away directly. He stretched his neck to look and confirmed that the person had really left before his face changed drastically and he spat out the cat food in his mouth. "It's too bad to eat." He sighed cross-legged, somewhat suspecting that the other party was making an excuse to leave. After waiting for almost 5 minutes, he didn't expect the girl to actually come back and bring her back. "I made a mistake and didn't write it down." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. She goes to move bricks without doing business. 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. She goes to move bricks without doing business. 9. Bread, jam, self-heating pot, and water. Won Yuan took out things from the bag and placed them one by one on the ground. "Please have dinner." Song Jin's gaze was complex, as he looked at the girl half squatting in front of him. Her face was pretty and more beautiful than many female celebrities he had ever seen. Her eyebrows and eyes were beautiful, her eyes were gentle, and there was a lot of contrast and familiarity. However, Song Jin couldn't figure out where he had seen her before. It was probably an illusion. A child the same age as his daughter. The heart of guarding against others is indispensable, so you are not afraid that I am a bad person. Song Jin couldn't help but habitually educate. Won Yuan was taken aback for a moment and said, "I'm not afraid. I'm strong and skilled in fighting." Song Jin felt that she was joking. What could her small body do? Girls can't be too strong, they can't talk to strangers. Look at what time it is. You're walking so far. What if someone follows you? Don't walk at night, go home early. Hello, verbose. Okay, this is still a stubborn girl. Song Jin felt that it was very pleasing to his eye. Suddenly, his decadent head lit up and he stared closely at Won Yuan, saying solemnly, "Do you want to be an actor?" Won Yu settled down for a moment, then said under the expectant gaze of Song Jin, "Do you want to be a millionaire?" "I didn't lie to you." Song Jin exclaimed excitedly, "I'm actually a particularly talented director. I think you fit well with the female lead in my new movie, and I can make you fire." "I understand." Won Yuan's face remained expressionless, pausing every word. "You don't have food to eat because you're a scammer." "What?" "A young idler, an old beggar." "What?" "The sword edge is sharpened, and the fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold." "What?" "A good man is ambitious and should not indulge in temporary pleasures. You are still young and can strive to support yourself. Don't deceive, not everyone will give you food, you have to rely on yourself to eat." Song Jin fell silent. "I'm leaving now." Won Yuan stood up with a serious expression, "I hope to meet you again. You are already a successful man." Song Jin stared at the girl's departing figure, his mind still buzzing, with successful men in both his left and right ears. Won Yuan left the alley, but it rained just a few minutes later. Even though she was wearing a camouflage jacket with a thin hoodie underneath, it quickly got wet. She shivered and found a place to take shelter from the rain. Is this God's punishment for stealing cat food from her? No, she only ate half of it. The remaining half has been returned. She also helped a river and lake scammer get lost and turn over a new leaf. Won Yuan felt extremely wronged, trembling as she hugged her arms and warmed up in place, shaking the remaining half of her walnut milk. Watching the growing rain, she felt particularly sad in her heart. If someone captures such a scene, they would probably find it very artistic, like a young girl sheltering from the rain in front of a bus stop. The night is heavy and the rain and mist are hazy, resembling the plot that would happen in Korean dramas. If nothing unexpected happens next, there should be a prince who will drape a coat over her or hold her in his arms. Unfortunately, reality went against him. Not only did Won Yuan not meet a prince, but he also became a just and good citizen once. She accidentally caught a glimpse of two men pushing and shoving around a person in a wheelchair on the opposite street corner, almost pushing that person onto the road. Respecting the elderly and loving the young is a traditional virtue of the Chinese nation. Surprisingly, some people dare to bully disabled people in public. I can't bear it. Stop it. Won Yuan furrowed her brows and rushed up without even thinking. She hurriedly splashed water on her sneakers as she stepped on the ground and helped the wheelchair that was falling towards the road. She whispered, "You didn't." Before she could finish speaking, she got stuck in her throat and was stunned when she saw that face. Surprisingly, it's him. The rain was still falling, the temperature was icy and piercing. After the man's black shirt was wet, his body showed thin and distinct lines, and his skin was pale to the point of being somewhat sickly. He slowly lifted his head, his eyes like a deep and bottomless night, shrouded in mist and malice, exuding a chilling and terrifying aura. However, at the moment he saw Won Yuan, he paused slightly. The health pot jumped up and down next to it, shouting urgently. "Hurry up! Hurry up! The opportunity for heroes to save beauty is here. You need to seize it." Won Yuan felt the sound of the health pot being particularly noisy, and his eyebrows furrowed and he didn't let go, pushing Mu Junchen back onto the sidewalk. "Don't be afraid, I'll protect you." Mu Junchen has never heard this sentence before, and no one has ever said it to him. Won Yuan is the first. Unfortunately, it was behind the scenes that he was so embarrassed and unbearable. The rain slid down the man's sharp and angular side face, sinking into the collar of his shirt. The fierce aura in his eyes quietly dissipated, and his slender fingers silently grasped the girl's wrist. A small piece in his palm seemed to shatter with a pinch, but he said he protected him. Wang Yuan thought he was afraid and patted Mu Junchen's shoulder as if to appease him. He fixed his gaze on the two people and said, "You shouldn't have treated him this way. This is not right. Apologize." The two young masters were obviously stunned. They didn't expect someone to meddle in their own affairs, and what's even more outrageous is that this person is still a young girl who hasn't done anything yet. The girl was wearing a hooded shirt and pencil pants, and her camouflage outfit was like stealing adult clothes. It was so wide that it almost covered her knees, and she was holding a bag of walnut milk in her hand. Her expression was cold and clear, and she looked like a child. She spoke in a strict manner, as if she were talking about the truth. Naive to the point of ridicule. Chen Su got drunk and became even more irritable when interrupted like this, with a puff. "What are you meddling in? He's just a cripple, be sensible and leave quickly." According to Article 3 of the Law of the People's Republic of China on the Protection of Persons with Disabilities, they enjoy equal rights with other citizens in political, economic, cultural, social, and family life, and their civil rights and personal dignity are protected by law. Wang Yuan didn't want to argue and said with a stern expression, "Do you, understand? This is illegal." The two of them were stunned for several seconds, but they didn't expect someone to talk to them about legal provisions. "Who's this kid from? I asked if you could understand something, little girl. What does his business have to do with you? Be careful, I'll clean it up with you." Wang Yuan was very angry and said, "What's wrong with your disability? You're just a little luckier than him and being a normal person. What qualifications do you have to discriminate against him?" The sound of rain mixed with the sound of speech, making it even more annoying without being able to say what it was. No one saw the farce at the street corner. Mu Junchen slowly closed his eyes, and rainwater rolled down his eyelashes, completely cold without any warmth. He held the girl's wrist with one hand, his strength was light, and the other hand was clasped onto the wheelchair, his veins bulging. He pulled Wang Yuan back a bit, his voice tinged with a hoarse and thin coldness in the rainy night, like an unpopular lonely ghost. "You go. Add more updates Xiao Yuzi. The sword edge is sharpened, and the fragrance comes from the ticket." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 10. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. She goes to move bricks without doing business, 10. Don't be afraid, if I say I'll protect you, I'll definitely be able to protect you. Wang Yuan's personality was very stubborn, and now her temper rose. She whispered seriously to Mu Junchen, then stood in front of him and looked coldly at the two people in front of her. She stood in front of him, with such a small one, rain and mist slanting down on the girl's hair. "This is the first time I've felt so incompetent, except when I woke up from a car accident. Despite her good family background and strong abilities, she is still a waste. She can't even protect the person she wants to protect, watching her being bullied in front of her." Chen Su let out a drunken hiccup and thought the girl was quite interesting. He pointed to himself and said, "Do you know how much it costs to wear this outfit? 300,000. Without waiting for Wang Yuan to speak, he continued proudly. "If you have the ability, go sue me. Do you think the Public Security Bureau will help you and this so-called disabled person?" Wang Yuan has been trying to control her temper and be a good person since the day she woke up, but she really wants to get angry now. She really wants to make this trash shut up and beat him up to the point where he can't speak. "Good luck. I want to fight." "No, it's not possible. Fighting cannot be used to solve problems, as fighting is illegal. Be a law-abiding and good citizen." She squinted her eyes as she looked at the person's clothes, her eyes rolled around, and suddenly, she felt blessed and had a sudden inspiration. So you're the second generation of wealthy people. Of course. A good family background. Chen Su sneered and said, I dare to say one about this Jiangqing, no one dares to say two. Oh, Wan Yuan smiled, with two deep dimples on her face. When she smiled, she appeared even more gentle and harmless. She asked with a good temper, do you know who he is? Who the hell are you? Another dude spat and laughed. He's Mu Junchen, Wan Yuan said lightly, and for a moment her expression looked a bit like a fox. Upon hearing those three words, Gongzi was stunned for a few seconds, with a strange and unnatural expression on his face. He then burst into laughter and said, anyone can touch porcelain now. Mu Junchen is alone here tonight. Who are you deceiving? Why, do you still want to tell me that you are Mu Xiao's mistress? No. Wan Yuan smiled slightly and corrected seriously, I'm not his mistress, I'm his wife. Mu Junchen. He squinted his eyes and slowly looked at Wan Yuan. She has a serious expression and looks a bit intimidating. But Chen Su had never heard of Mu Xiao having a wife, and he had never met Mu Junchen. He couldn't even climb up to a position like the Mu family, but he had heard about it several times in financial reports, but that didn't prevent him from being arrogant in front of a wild girl. He shook his head and said, I know Mu Junchen's parents from his mother. Even the Mu family has to grovel before me. What are you? Very good. Wan Yuan nodded in satisfaction, clear and agile. She took out her phone from Chen Su's gaze and calmly called Zhuo Wan. After the other party connected in seconds, she turned on the hands-free so that everyone present could hear her voice, and spoke with a crisp shout. Mom. Zhuo Wan. Excited heart, trembling hands. Oh, Mom is here. Zhuo Wan was even a little flattered, thinking to herself that the child was too enthusiastic, even calling her mom. I'm with Mu. Chen now. Wan Yu made a hard turn, making her tone sound more intimate. She lowered her head and looked at the man, using her eyes to suggest that he cooperate and not speak. Mu Junchen's figure froze, motionless, and his eyelashes trembled imperceptibly. Wan Yuan was very satisfied with his manners and said to the person on the phone, her tone was both obedient and sweet, a bit pitiful. On the way, we met two people who bullied us and even said they knew you. Who dares to bully you? Give him the phone. Zhuo Wan still doesn't believe that anyone in Jiangqing dares to bully the expectant daughter. In law of the Mu family. She was so elated that she didn't even care about the loss of the facial mask on her face. After hearing Wan Yuan called her mother and Chen, she smiled brightly and felt that getting a marriage certificate was just around the corner. This is only our first day living together. She deserves to be her son. That's the speed of the move. Wan Yuan looked affectionately at the two young masters and said, are you reminiscing about the past? Both Chen Su and another friend were confused. I didn't expect this girl to actually make phone calls in front of them, really fake. Lu Jiogong drove over and bought an umbrella. When he returned, he saw several people blocking Mu Junchen's side, and his face changed. What are you doing? Wan Yuan remembered Lu Jiu, and when she saw him coming over, her heart lifted as she was afraid that she would just reveal her true feelings. She spoke up in front of the young master and frantically hinted, these two people are bullying your master too much. Even Mu Junchen dares to bully him, break his leg. Lu Jiu was also confused when he saw Wan Yuan. He didn't know why she was here. Upon hearing this, he frowned and looked at the two men across from him. Are you Lu Jiu? Chen Su looked at Lu Jiu incredulously, his voice trembling and his head blank. Most people in the Jiangqing family know that there is a bodyguard named Lu Jiu around Mu Junchen. Mu Junchen doesn't often appear after his car accident, and the vast majority of things are handled by Lu Jiu. If he is Road 9. Then the person in the wheelchair, I heard you didn't speak ill of your husband. Lu Jiu guessed in his heart what was going on, his face expressionless. The string on Gongzi's head broke directly, and as soon as his leg softened, he stumbled and knelt on the ground. Now, his drunkenness had cleared up for the most part. They never expected that just teasing a cripple would really hit Mu Junchen. The ruler of the Mu family, whom they have never been able to climb up in their lifetime. Chen Su also knelt down on the ground with a thud of displeasure, his face turning pale and showing no signs of his previous demeanor. Mu Shao, I was drunk and didn't even wake up earlier. I didn't mean to. Another friend was also about to cry, regretting his uncontrollable drunkenness and fearfully saying, "It's all my fault. You have a lot, don't argue with things like me." Wan Yuan held her phone in her left hand and felt a bit confused as she watched the speed at which these two people changed their faces. The rain is still falling, with no stopping trend. The light and shadow of the street lamps are dim and twisted, and the rain is scattered and shattered. Mu Junchen watches them without any waves. No special emotions, like looking at a dead person. A chill rose from Chen Su's bones, his teeth trembling, and he begged incoherently, slapping himself hard. Wan Yuan couldn't help but marvel, he didn't expect a sentence from Mu Junchen to have such great power. She lowered her head to look at the man next to her, only to realize that he was still holding onto her wrist, with slender and distinct fingers, blue knuckles, and beautiful hands. She twisted her wrist slightly, trying to save her hand, but was subconsciously clenched tighter by Mu Junchen. Mu Junchen looked up at her, his pupils pitch black like ink stones, silent. Wan Yuan's heart skipped a beat, feeling that the gaze was a bit gripping. Book Friend Group. For 132978819 today is also a day to pack tickets and book reviews in your pocket, please indulge me to the fullest. What is this called? The operation was as fierce as a tiger. Relying on Mu Junchen to save Mu Junchen moved. End of this chapter.